and welcome to Carlos and Lisa. I'm Lisa Remillard.
And I'm Carlos Amezcua. Linda Grasso is here to talk about her new podcast, She Says.
Do you know?
She Says.
You remember Linda Grasso,
from
of
E?
course.
Of course.
E.
Absolutely.
So she will be here to talk all about her new venture. It is very interesting.
She Says.
She Says. Spelled differently than you think.
Okay. That's
also coming up on this show, don't you love to look at underwater photography? I find it fascinating.
When it's in focus, yes.
Well, this guy knows a little something about how to focus photos underwater. You'll meet Nathan Lucas, and he will share with you some tips on how to do that.
They are amazing.
And
Absolutely
his pictures
amazing.
are worth sticking around.
My
to look
iPhone
at.
does not work well underwater. It's just something I've discovered.
Correct. I'm glad that you've shared that.
And then the iPhone kind of breaks.
Yeah, right. I was going to say then you have to stand in that line. It's a whole
terrible
thing.
All right, so that's very cool. Look, it's hard to forget those massive wildfires and the lives lost from the California wildfires last year. The worst wildfire season in our state's history.
More than 85 people died. You'll remember that. Almost 2 million acres burned across the state. As of today, more than $20 billion is still being spent to just try and recover. I know right here, we were here in this studio last year when the Woolsey fire started coming across the area where we are, and people had to be evacuated. Folks lost their homes.
You know, this has happened time and time again, having lived here for a good part of 30 years in this area. You find that fires will grow. If they get them early, they stop growing and then it's over. But those unique wildfires that burn from, let's say, Simi Valley all the way to down the Malibu to the Malibu coast, frightening. Because they just seem so out of control, and there's a lot of things that come into play there, but mostly it's just saving lives and making sure people don't get injured.
Well, and then you think to yourself too, do we have enough resources? Are we giving the resources that we need to the firefighters who are putting their lives on the line to save us all, to save our property, to save our families and our pets and our loved ones?
Well, how about that fire in Paradise that blew through that town in minutes?
I know.
I mean, those people had no chance.
Well, and so that leads us to this year. Now here we are in 2019, getting into these summer months when it's going to be hot again. And there was a new forecast that says this year's wildfire season may rival last year. Believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, you saw the rains. We had a lot of rains. The growth is unbelievable. I mean, it's
everywhere.
It's really high up. All right, so let's talk a little bit more in detail about what to expect, how we can prepare, and what our area fire departments are doing to prepare us for this fire season.
All right, our friend, the Chief of Orange County Fire Authority, is here to talk about that. Welcome, Brian Fennessy. Hello. Thank you for coming
Chief Fennessy,
in.
good to see you.
I wouldn't have missed it.
Well, thank you. All right, so you were here in Orange County around the time last year when we were in the throes of those fires.
Exactly.
Let's just take us back before we go into what's happening this year. Take us back to that, and what was that time like for you and your department?
Well, we were experiencing in Orange County, even in San Diego County, the same wind conditions and humidity conditions that we were up here in Los Angeles, in Ventura County. That morning, the campfire had started. We were notified that there were a lot of resource requests for all agencies to support. I recall about early afternoon, the Hill Fire starting just north of here in Ventura County, and then the Woolsey Fire. Our resources didn't get much further than here and were immediately put on the fire. But these fires are growing so quickly that we can't get resources out to them, fast enough. And it was probably a day later when we were told that, hey, listen, if you break a fire in Orange County or San Diego, you're not going to get any help for a while. So circle the wagons and be prepared to protect yourselves. So we and others, we stood up everything that had wheels on it and hose on it and water on it, and we were fortunate that we did not get an ignition. Otherwise,
would have been.
Could have been the same story.
So there's a couple things. We have manpower issues, we have equipment issues, funding issues, and it seems that now the fire seasons are getting worse. And I still don't understand why they're getting worse and why the conditions have become so much more volatile than they were when I was a kid.
Right, and some of that's correct, but we have more resources than we've ever had, more aircraft, more capable aircraft, more engines. It really is the burning conditions. It's the environment, whether you believe there's climate change or not. We do. I mean, we're seeing, when I started, In 1978 with the Forest Service, we had a fire season that went from July 1 to December 1. You could almost count on it.
Yeah,
like
Smokey Bear used to tell us that.
Right?
Sure.
And now it's kind of expanded to where you can get a fire depending on what time of year it is, any time during the year. We've experienced that extended drought here in Southern California for many, many years. We didn't have it this winter.
Right.
No.
But all that vegetation that, we're in a desert, right?
Right.
The vegetation native here is drought resistant. Well, they can survive a few years without any moisture. Beyond that, it dies. So when we look at our hills now, right, they look green and the grasses have dried, right? That dead fuel, and that's what it is for us, fuel, it's still there.
Oh, yeah.
When that green, lush stuff dries out, you still got that dead component.
So I was just reading the most recent assessment of what we can expect for this fire season, and it's not great.
It's not great.
It's not great. So what should we all be doing now, given that assessment?
Sure. We talk a lot about Ready, Set, Go. You'll hear us, CAL FIRE, LA County. We talk a lot about it, and really it's prepare now. The ready part is, hey, nothing's going on now. We all don't think that it's ever going to happen to us, but we keep seeing it does. You got to be ready. You got to start putting that information you need together, your personal effects, your hard drive, all those things. You know where they are, and have a plan.
Right.
Have an escape plan. So that when something happens and we tell you, hey, or you hear that something's going on, you know where that stuff is, you're preparing it, and then we say go, you got to go. Many times people that don't survive these fires waited too long to go, thinking they could ride it out, and by the time they decide to escape, it's just too late.
There's nothing more horrible than all of that. I've gone through a couple of fires myself. It's traumatic. It's difficult. And when you say about Ready, Set, Go, it's really interesting to me. As we've talked to many of our neighbors here in the Malibu and the Thousand Oaks area and other places around this part of Los Angeles County, where you realize that people were maybe not getting the right information and good information, and I think that was partly to blame, I think, with the different operations that were going on there.
And there were too many fires. There were just so many fires. So many fires, and they were
spread
everywhere.
out all over the place. And so we had one guest who came, Tracy Bregman, who lost everything, and she lost her home. But many people were told, "You're okay," but things change, and I don't think people are ready for change.
Right. No, it's chaos, right? I mean, I've been doing this 41 years, and we get these big disasters. We have plans, and we plan very well. But largely these disasters don't follow our plans.
Of course not.
And so when you see smoke in the air, you see these things, don't wait for the reverse 911 call, some of these other, turn on your radios, listen, but if you think you might be in a position of danger or risk, leave.
Right. I want to talk real quick about, you mentioned something that I think is kind of contrary to what we keep hearing in the news when we talk about fires and fire departments. I know the governor was just kind of raked over the coals over it a little bit, funding for CAL FIRE, funding for more fire engines and firefighters. Okay, so that's my question. You said that we were we have resources, but do we? Let
me put it in context. So we do need all those resources. We'd love to have more engines, more firefighters, all those things, and we need those for our normal fires, right? Our day-to-day, those fires that are going to the top of those. The big difference is, and where we're seeing the Camp Fire was an example, the Woolsey Fire, you go back over time, the Panorama, all these are the wind-driven fires, right? The Santa Ana wind, extreme hurricane-forced winds. I would offer up that, if you'd have had 100 engines, you weren't going to stop that fire once it jumped the freeway. And I think the after-action reports, when they come out, you'll hear that. We experienced that in San Diego during the Cedar fires.
Sure.
It wouldn't matter if we'd had 100 helicopters. Thankfully, the percentage of time we're in that environmental condition is so slight. But when we have an ignition, we are now, as fire chiefs, communicating to the community that when we have ignitions during those conditions in certain areas, fires are going to be what we call uncontrollable. We're just not going to be able to control those fires. So now we're in rescue mode. We're alerting people, we're getting them out of the way of the fire, and containing where we can on those edges. But the conditions out there, we're trying to manage expectations. We still need all those resources to contain those other fires that occur all the time. But we'll never have enough resources. The mutual aid system in California is more robust than anywhere in the world. ICS, Instant Command System, started right here in LA County. And it's wonderful, but it takes time for resources from Northern California to drive down, for the out-of-state stuff to come. The Woolsey Fire was at the beach.
Quick. Yeah.
you can't muster enough forces to stop that.
Well, and we hope that people are listening to what you're saying and paying attention and getting ready to take care of their defensible space.
Yes.
We talk about it every season.
year.
Every year we talk about taking care of the trees and the brush around your house. You got to give the firefighters a chance to save your house.
You do. I mean, it's a changed environment. Like I say, 40 years of this, I can't believe. Every year I'm going, gosh, I've never seen that before.
Right.
And there was probably 20, 25 years where, some of us that have been doing this a long time would make, fire behavior predictions and could get pretty good at it. Now that's not the case. The fuel conditions have changed, the weather conditions have changed, technology's kept pace. We're alerting, and we're, 2003, we didn't know the Cedar Fire was coming into the city of San Diego for 12 hours.
Right.
That was before social media and everything else.
Right.
We know now through social media and other things, the instant fire starts.
As we wrap up, I just want to say that something that you said really struck me, which was with the Santa Ana condition, there's not enough fire engines in the world that could stop a fire that's moving with that wind element on top of it. So it just strikes me as another just cautionary, you have to be ready to go because
very quickly.
There's not enough people in the world to fix it.
And the best alerting systems in the world may not alert you in time. Carlos is absolutely right. The key is jumping on these fires quickly, even in these wind conditions. So generally, it's where there is that ignition, under what wind conditions will drive where that fire goes. We do have success sometimes during those winds, but if a fire ignites or spots, I mean, we're talking about embers. We're talking about embers the size of baseballs while it's blowing.
Oh, yeah.
We cannot control those.
Yeah.
And we just have to manage people's expectations.
All right. Well, be prepared if you learn nothing else right now. Chief Fennessy, thank you for your time today.
Great to have you here.
Thank
We'll see
you.
you again.